Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are live, and I thank you for tuning in to the George Espenlaub live stream show on Monday afternoon. We're waiting for our guests to come in. Randy is with me on the telephone. He's coming in from a different angle. Uh, so uh, if I pick up the phone and talk to him, you'll be privy to hear what we're saying. We did this once before, I think, with a lady down in South Carolina. Uh, we had one of the same problems, and we maneuvered through it, and we made it. But friends, Romans, and countrymen, thank you for lending me your ears this afternoon. We have an exciting show planned just for you. Wow. As one colleague reminded me about 45 minutes ago, Randy Osborn is one of the finest scientists in America. And not only that, on top of all that, he is a Christian scientist, which makes it all the better. We're going to be discussing some exciting things today. Uh, Things that perhaps you have taken for granted over the years that might just blow your socks right off your feet. But nonetheless, we're going to have us a great time. Let me see if see if Randy's getting any better here. Are you getting anywhere, bud?
Not yet. Still working.
Okay, he's still working. Uh, Nothing like still working. Wow. Here's what we want you to do. We are live streaming into Facebook and we are live streaming to Twitter simultaneously. So we want you to come in and leave your comments, ask your questions. Just come in and let us know that you're here. We want you to participate. That makes it so much more fun when people come in and participate, ask questions, throw their comments up, uh, say hello to each other. You can meet some friendly people in these chat rooms. So we invite you to come in. While we're waiting for Randy, let me put this up here for you. Excuse me. This is Monday, Wednesday, Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 o'clock Pacific Time. We are going to have a gentleman on here by the name of Steve Schneider. I don't know if I shared that screen or not. Okay, let me share this with you. Here, who is going to be with us on Wednesday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 o'clock Pacific Time. That's where Steve will be coming to us from. Discover the true story of pilot Howard Snyder, which was his father, and the crew of the B 17, Susan Ruth. That is a picture of the crew who were incidentally shot down on February 8th, 1944, over the French Belgian border after a mission uh, of bombing Frankfurt, Germany. You can see videos on his website. There is the book that he has written, award winning. I mean, I don't know how many, winner of 20 book awards. Uh, there's over 200 time period photographs of the people who were involved in the places where their stories took place. Uh, it's a must read. He has letters, documents, directories, all those good things. And he will be with us, that man right there. He will be with us Wednesday afternoon for an incredible story. If you're a history buff, and I believe that everyone should be a history buff, if you're a history buff, you make sure you tune in on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 o'clock Pacific Time, because you are about to hear an incredible story. They don't teach this in high school anymore. It needs to be taught, but he has the stories of the men who flew the mission, what happened to them when they were shot down. Some were captured, some escaped, evaded and escaped back into England with the help of the Belgian resistance and the French resistance. Some lost their lives, but it's an incredible story. The true story of pilot Howard Schneider, who was his father, and the crew of the B 17, Susan Ruth. So, you come and be with us on Wednesday afternoon. I think Randy is just about ready to come in. I see down on the bottom, but I don't see his picture yet. He'll be here. Uh, Dax, here's Dax from Canada. Saw the flashing lights dropping by. Glad to have you, Dax. Uh, we're going to get this thing on the road here pretty soon. I'm glad to have you. Hope you're having a good day there in Canada. So, uh, more people's out there. Come on in. Drop by. Let us know that you're here. And let me check and see how Randy's doing. Randy, how are you doing? Are you still there, bud?
I'm here, but it's saying that I don't have a microphone.
Do you have a built-in? Do you have a built-in mic right there on your?
I've never used that feature. I don't even know.
Yeah. Did it ask you if they were if they could enable your camera and your mic?
No, it just said couldn't find a microphone. Is it possible you don't have one plugged in?
Okay. What is it, a laptop or a desktop?
The desktop.
Okay. Uh, okay. If it was a laptop, uh, you don't happen to have any dooflickies across the bottom. Uh, it says camera slash mic or anything like that.
Yeah, camera slash mic.
Okay. Uh, click on that once.
Okay. Says standard definition, high definition, or low definition. Oh, and it has a slash through it. Camera.
Okay. As you go down that list, do you see an audio?
Audio says no mic, speaker default. I turn the speaker on. I don't know if that helps. Yeah, it's blank.
The microphone is there two little boxes there that says mic and then one that says speaker?
Yes, the mic one is empty and then has a microphone with a slash through it.
Okay. Is there a pull down tab in that little box?
No, sir.
No? Okay. Okay. Yeah, so I guess in that case you would have to plug in a mic with a USB in the USB port. Uh, okay. Uh,
Can you go with my voice or no?
I could we can do this if uh, if you hang up, I'll message you a number that you can call in,
Okay.
and everybody can hear you over the phone line as we do this.
Let's do that.
Okay. I'll send you I'll hang up and I'll send you the number.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right, we're getting somewhere. Uh, due to technicalities beyond our control, We are going. We are going the next best route. All right, here we go. Let me get this number to him here. Uh, this, this, this. Okay. Now let me go over here and do one more thing. Next time we have Randy on, I'll guarantee. Here he comes. All right, old buddy. Can you hear me? Okay, let me see here.
There you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You'll probably have to back the phone up away from the computer because that's where you're getting the feedback.
Okay, how's this?
That's good. That's good. Now
Great.
we got it. All right.
Now we're talking.
Yes. Now we're talking. I just told the viewers and the listeners and all the peoples that the next time we'll have this thing down pat. We'll
Sounds good to me.
we'll get it down like a science. No pun intended, Randy.
Okay.
But ladies and gentlemen, there is more ways to skin a cat. Just took us a minute to figure it out. So we have with us this afternoon from Columbus, Ohio, Mr. Randy Osborn. And as one of my colleagues informed me about 45, 50 minutes ago, this man is one of the finest scientists in America. And on top of that, he is a Christian scientist, which makes it oh so lovely. Randy, welcome.
Thank you, sir. It's good to be here.
I've anticipated this thing since Saturday when we talked. And
Me too.
if I could get my little nifty device, which I left lay somewhere else. Oh boy. But anyhow, Randy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I've been teaching science for 30 years. I really enjoy the sciences, and one of the big reasons why I got into science was I saw an area of controversy between trusting the scriptures and believing whatever a scientist says. I also found that a lot of things that are claimed to be science were questionable at best. They were more conclusions than they were observations. And I found that bothersome. And I saw that the United States was doing poorly and competing against other nations in science. So I decided to prepare myself, took some courses at Ohio State University, and became a certified science teacher.
And you're not only that, I think I read you have studied at 14 colleges and universities.
Yes, sir.
You have you have a number of, I call them thingies, uh, uh, all them abbreviation thingies that I was looking at this morning.
I've done some education. Yep.
Yeah, you have done some. What was it called? Nanotechnology writings
Oh, yes. That was fun.
for.
Ohio State University asked me to work with them on nanotechnology, and I really enjoyed that. They were preparing for a presentation to the National Science Foundation, and they needed some high school science teachers to assist them in designing nanoscience lessons for high school students. And I told them, well, I don't know nanoscience. And they said, well, you're going to learn it. So we got busy, and I did the lessons, and I ended up teaching a bunch of teachers from across the state how to teach those lessons and do the labs. And then they had me do a presentation to the National Science Foundation, after which they awarded a $12.5 million grant to Ohio State University. So that was kind of nice.
I would say you learned that nano stuff pretty quick, huh?
Well, yeah, it's kind of fun.
And getting a $12 million grant, I'd say that you not only learned it quick, you did a good job in learning it.
That's what they were feeling, so that's good.
There's so many things. Oh, and not only that, in college, didn't you win the national championship on the wrestling mats?
Well, I won a high school national Greco-Roman tournament. I won junior world national Greco-Roman tournament, and I won senior national Sambo nationals. So I've had three titles in wrestling.
Wow. And you've been teaching for 30 years.
Yes, sir.
And out of those 30 years, I was impressed this morning as I was reading. Out of your classrooms has come doctors, genetic researchers, medical researchers, EMTs, firefighters. The list goes on and on and on and on.
Pharmacists and nurses, etc. Yes, sir. And science teachers.
And science teachers, yes. So you have left
a number of pastors also.
You have left an indelible mark on people's lives, Randy.
Well, I'm glad the Lord saw fit to use me to help.
On Saturday when we was talking, you were getting ready to go have breakfast with one of your former students, who is what is he now?
He's a Reverend Doctor preacher, and he gave me a signed copy of a book that he wrote, so that was really special.
All these former students that you have, no doubt, beyond any doubt, left an impression upon their lives. That must give you a warm, fuzzy feeling inside, huh?
Oh, you have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so blessed and so honored to be remembered and communicated with. I had a former chemistry student from Peru contact me just yesterday, and that was very special to hear from her.
The last time we were on, or the time before that, Randy's been on with us 2 or 3 times now. You were driving to Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh.
Oh, yes.
A former exchange student.
Yes, sir. She just got her master's from Carnegie Mellon. In fact, she got a job in one of the Carolinas, but she is now stuck in China. She cannot get back because of the coronavirus problem.
Mm.
So she's got a job waiting for her, but when the time's right, she'll be able to come back and complete that work.
That only goes to show people that that one person touched by God can make the difference in so many different people's lives. Not only the American students, but all the exchange students that you've had an opportunity to be a mentor to also.
It's a huge blessing and an honor.
Wow. I told you Saturday, it's not a profession. It's your calling. Then another thing.
I think you're right.
Another thing I read this morning, and I was really impressed, was that Columbia offered you a chance to come and study and become a doctor. And you turned doctoring down to stay in the classroom with the inner city kids.
I can't leave my students.
That's love exemplified right there, brother.
George, when you see the difference it makes in these students when they start thinking differently and acting differently, it's so precious, so valuable.
Oh my!
You couldn't pay me to leave.
Ladies and gentlemen, Randy and I discussed, and after the show, if he has a few minutes, we'll put the finishing touches on everything, or just about all of it. Uh, we're going to have segments where Randy comes on, and we're going to be discussing things. Uh, we'll have overlays to put up and different things that people can see and uh, actually look at and so on and so forth. But we're going to make this thing a segment to where people can uh, tune in at a certain time, at a certain date, and we'll run with this thing because science science can be fun, can it, Randy?
Oh, absolutely. It can be intimidating, but it can be fun.
I remember my days at 71 and a half years old now. I can barely remember my days back in high school. Uh, Biology class, uh, chemistry. I think I just about blew the whole lab up one day. I,
Oops.
yeah, I did
So that
something.
was an accident, right?
It was. Uh, the man just got done telling us, don't mix this with that, or put water on that, or dump this down the sink, whatever. But whatever he said, I just did the opposite. uh, Needless to say, the maintenance crew had we had to evacuate the room, and the maintenance crew had to come in and repair the sink, and between the two desks and all that stuff. Uh,
Oops.
yeah, uh,
You
I,
would have been fun to have in class.
yeah, I can remember that part. But but all in all, I've always been interested in science. Uh, Things such as the creation and we were talking on Saturday, ladies and gentlemen, and we were talking. I said, Randy, what do you want to talk about? He said, well, we can talk about the age of the Earth, the beginning of life, cavemen, fossils, blah blah. And wow, it just dinosaurs. It just went on and on and on and on and on. So it is endless, absolutely endless. Let me ask you this, Randy, because some of the scientists, like you just said, they come to a conclusion, uh, and it amazes me as with intelligent people how they can come up with some of this stuff. For instance, how old is the Earth?
So when you're talking about how old is the Earth, do you want to know actual age or theoretical age?
No, the actual age.
Okay. Then you probably want to approach it historically instead of through science. Because scientists love to observe a process, measure it, and then extrapolate backwards and pretend that they know the initial conditions, that the speed of this process never changed, it was a completely closed system, and then come up with an answer. But I can show you how foolish that idea is in lots of different ways. Let's take, for example, let's say a scientist came across a candle burning. And someone said, well, how long has that candle been burning? So they go to a store and they get a candle, they see how long it is, and then they burn it and see how much time it takes to burn so far. And then they assume that they know how long the candle was to start with. And they assume that once it was lit, it was never changed. They assume that the amount of carbon dioxide in the air has been steady, that there's been no added or subtracted oxygen from the atmosphere. It's never been blown out and relit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they come up with an answer. But all they're doing is a math problem. A math problem does not answer the question, how long has the candle been burning? That's not a science question. That is a history question. And people get confused. Science is a knowledge of nature based on human observation. So when it starts talking about things that weren't observed, it's no longer science. It's speculation, imagination. But history is a knowledge of the past based on the testimony of witnesses. And what you really need to answer your question is a reliable witness who was there, who knows how old the Earth is. And I'm happy to say that I know such a witness, and he's given us a written record. And there's been approximately 4,000 years from Adam to Christ and approximately 2,000 years from Christ to now. So in the neighborhood of 6,000 years and change is about the age of the earth.
And the scientists are just jumping up and down. I mean, they
Yeah,
they
yeah. They know things.
they
know
got
things.
themselves twisted, and they're standing on their head, clapping their feet,
And they
snarling.
think I'm ignorant. They think I'm ignorant because they know this, that, and the other.
Yes,
But you know what? I'm not ignorant. I've read their books, I've researched, and I've looked at the actual scientific articles and found holes that you could drive a truck through. They don't want to talk about that. They don't put that in the textbooks. The textbooks contain an awful lot of conclusions without much evidence. And when we're learning science in my classroom, we'll read something in a textbook, and then I'll say, okay, students, what evidence did they give for that? And they say, nothing. It's just a conclusion. I teach them to distinguish between observation and inference, observation and conclusion, because they are so different from each other. I can tell you that the Earth is 4.6 billion years old, okay?
hmm
But that wouldn't be actual years. That could be radiometric years, which means you're making some huge assumptions, none of which are verifiable. So it makes it very, very difficult to come up with an answer that you can trust. And as proof of that, there were rocks formed 200 years ago in Hawaii. Human beings actually watched them form. And they have been dated by scientists at 21 million years old. So they're off by about, 21 million years. All right. Also, there's been rocks that have been laid down in Yellowstone. You familiar with the petrified forest?
yes,
So they love to say, well, look, there's been 27 different forests that grew and then were destroyed. And then another one grew and it was destroyed. And then they say layer upon layer upon layer of forests built up here. And they just assumed that was true for decades. And then something rather amazing happened in the state of Washington. There was a volcano that exploded and it knocked down lots of trees. It emptied a lake that went up the side of a mountain and then scoured trees off of the mountain. And these trees were banging into each other in Spirit Lake and rubbing the bark off of each other. And they became waterlogged and soaked. And at different days, different ones would become so heavy that they would tilt straight upright, having their roots ripped off. And then they would go down to the bottom of the lake and sit in the sediment. And then the volcano would explode again, and there'd be more sediment, more trees, more, on and on and on. It just kept happening over and over again. Well, make a long story short, people didn't think to ask the question, why are all these trees in Yellowstone's petrified forest, why do they all have their roots ripped off? Yes, they're vertical, but their roots have been snapped off. And they also didn't bother to check to take a slice of these trees and look at the tree rings and compare them with each other, because the bottom layer tree has identical tree ring structure to the top layer tree and all the ones in between. In other words, these trees all lived at the same time. They were just buried in 27 different layers after they became water soaked, like the ones from the explosion of the volcano in the state of Washington. So we're getting an insight from things that we see now into how things can have formed in the past in a way that might make you think that there's billions of years involved, but actually, no, just a very short time and a very large cataclysm, a disaster that happened on the surface of the earth that led to a lot of death and water soaking and burial, and kind of makes me think of the event that they call Noah's flood,
hmm
a little larger than what happened up in the state of Washington.
I think we mentioned it before, but I I have always I don't know what the right word, but anyhow, when God created Adam,
Yes, sir.
He created a full grown, mature, intelligent
Oh, yes.
man. It doesn't say how old he was when he was created. When he created Eve, same thing. So now we have man and woman in the garden, mature adults, very intelligent, and the whole 9 yards.
Hmm.
When God said, and He created the trees and uh, the animals and all these things, He created a tree that was a tree. I mean, it wasn't a little.
Good point. It wasn't a seed. It wasn't a seed.
Yeah, it wasn't a
It was a
seed. It,
tree.
it was a grown tree. Uh, so when when these scientists look at these things, they can't realize that man was created as a whole man, mature, intelligent, full grown, the whole 9 yards. They don't understand that. They can't understand that, or they won't accept it, or just
But I can understand them for a couple reasons.
okay.
Number one, they have been totally schooled in materialism, naturalism.
Hmm.
They've been taught since they were young that the only things that are real are physical: time, space, matter, energy. Anything else they think is imaginary or fairy tale, just a story. They they really believe that if you're going to answer something, you have to deal in reality. And what they mean by reality is that which is physical. Now, that's not true because there are things that are not physical that are real. Take, for example, justice. Can you weigh justice? You put it on a scale. Can you measure how tall it is? Can you take a picture of it? There's no, it's not physical,
Right.
but it's real. Also, love and many other things are not physical, but yet they are real. So part of it is their education, and they're going to believe according to that. But there's something more to it, and that has to do with what is a convenient worldview for a person. If a person's going to have a worldview that says everything is physical, then that totally alleviates any concern about morality. Whatever's convenient for me is good. They believe in, natural selection. Whoever can get more stuff faster, go ahead. Whatever's pleasurable, enjoy, etc. But if you believe in the Creator and you know that He's communicated to us, then you have a responsibility to Him. He communicates what's good, what's right, what's bad, what's wrong, and He makes us morally responsible, accountable to Him. A lot of people don't like that because they have favorite sins that they don't want to give up. It's totally separate and distinct from that which is physical to deal with the spirit of the living God. He's alive and He's active, and he gives us a conscience. And when someone's conscience is awakened, then they have a decision to make. Are they going to fight the Lord, or are they going to try and cooperate with Him and admit that they're false and that they've done wrong? And that's one of the big reasons why I trust the Scriptures. The writers of the Bible in the Scriptures admit their own faults. They say they did wrong. Try and find people today that will admit that.
Mm-hmm.
It's very rare. They love to tell you all their successes and how wonderful everything is, and how good they are, and on and on and on. But we're human beings and we do wrong. God calls it sin. And Jesus said very plainly, the light came into the world, but men preferred darkness because their deeds were evil. So a lot of people don't want to get new information, make a new decision about something that could expose them as a wrongdoer and having to change and give up their drunkenness or give up their drugging or give up their infidelity with their spouse or, etc. I don't want it. It's not convenient.
We're going to, if you just joined us, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to make this a regular thing because, as I already stated, there's so much. There's so much. We're going to have overlays, we'll put up on the screen and video clips, blah, 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 the whole 9 yards. And it's impossible to cover, excuse me, it's impossible to cover with one time or two times or three times. That's why we've talked and we'll finalize our plans to make this into a segment to where we can go in and talk about these things. Not only talk about these things, but see how these things really are for what they are. Such things as the creation. Randy, explain something to me real quick.
Yes, sir.
This carbon testing.
Oh, yes.
That scientists do. Is it reliable, or let me go back to this. Let me go back to this again.
That's a great question. Wow. So many students never ask that question. Never.
When
they just assume a man in a white coat said it, it must be true.
Yeah. Now, like you said earlier, people stood there and watched these rocks form.
Yep.
And then they did that carbon test. Is that how they did it? It was like 21 million years ago. Is that how they come?
Crazy.
Is that how they came to that conclusion, by you doing one of them carbon tests?
Something like that. But they did maybe a uranium to lead test instead of a carbon 14 to nitrogen 14 test.
But yet those people.
But with the carbon can only date things up to about 50 to 100,000 years. All right, and even at that, it's not accurate because there are so many assumptions that you have to guess right, or you can't get the right answer. Mm-hmm. Again, it's a math problem. So if you plug in bad data, you're going to get a bad output. But I'll just give you some reasons why you can get some bad results from it. The first assumption of carbon-14 dating is that the living thing that has died, that you're dating, mm-hmm. that it assimilated the carbon-14 that was around it into its body. So assimilation simply means taking what's not you and making it you. You eat a steak or you eat a salad or you drink some milk. It used to be something else, but then part of it is digested and moves into your body and becomes part of you, part of your body. Mm-hmm. So it's expected by scientists, assumed by them, that the carbon-14 in the air, which is formed when cosmic rays hit our atmosphere, turns nitrogen into carbon-14, that radioactive carbon will be taken in by the plant, for example, and that it will reach equilibrium. It will come to the same amount, the same concentration of carbon in the plant as it is in the atmosphere. But there's a problem with that. I've discussed this with botanists, that plants differentially absorb carbon-14. Some of them are carbon-14 rejectors. They won't take in carbon-14. How in the world they can tell the difference between a tiny little atom of carbon-12 or carbon-14, I don't know, and neither do the botanists. But somehow some plants just flat out won't take it into their stomata and turn it into part of their little plant body. So here's the problem with that. The problem with that is some animals, and many animals are very repetitive in the kind of things that they like to eat. They might eat just grass, or they might eat just this or that. If they're eating a thing that has rejected carbon-14, then as soon as they die, if they do the carbon-14 test to date the age of this body to see how long ago it died, it would immediately date it 100,000 years old because it doesn't have the carbon-14. Well, is that accurate? Not even close. I mean, it's not reliable. So assimilation is the first assumption, and assimilation is not a valid assumption. All plants do not absorb carbon-14 equally. Some don't absorb it at all. They also assume that you know the beginning ratios of the parent and daughter nuclides. The parent nuclide in this case would be carbon-14. The daughter nuclide would be nitrogen-14. Do we know at the time that every dead thing that we dig up, that at the time that they lived, do we know what the amount of carbon-14 and nitrogen was in the atmosphere and in their body at that time that they lived? No, we don't. But yet, they assume that they do. It reminds me of a professor I had at Ohio State in the astronomy department. He put up complicated Greek formula, didn't explain what any of the Greek symbols meant, and he proudly proclaimed to hundreds of students in the class, if we know two of these values, we can calculate the third, as if he could just, know anything he wanted to about the stars. And I raised my hand from, dozens of spaces back in this huge lecture hall, and he said, yes. I said, sir, you said if we know two of the values, we can calculate the third, but don't we only really know one of those three values? He said, well, yes, but we've got a pretty good idea about the other. Well, I hate to break it to you or him or any other science person. Pretty good idea is not an observation. It's still an idea. It's a thought. It's an imagination. It's a conclusion. It's not an observation. It's not science. So unless I had spoken up, all those students would have been hoodwinked into thinking that he knew thousands of things that he didn't know. Kind of odd. So we don't know the beginning ratios of parent and daughter nuclides. The other thing that they assume is that there's a completely closed system. This applies to carbon-14, but it also applies to, for example, a rock. They have a rock that's been formed. It's been an igneous melt, and then it's hardened. And they want to check the parent and daughter nuclide ratios to see how long ago did this rock form? Well, unless you've had a completely closed system, that is one where no of the radioactive salts or their byproducts, the results that form when they fall apart, have been added to it or subtracted from it, then you really don't know. Even if you measure carefully, you get the wrong answer because it's not all there or extra's been added. What's the problem with that? Well, rocks are taken from the Earth. The Earth, the globe is 70% blue because it's covered with water. And where it's not blue, it still rains and has dew and frost and snow and drizzle and sleet and hail, and etc. So these minerals are water soluble. They can dissolve in and out. So do you have a completely closed system on a world that's covered with water and minerals that are dissolvable in water? No, you don't. To pretend that you do is not honest. Another thing that you have to assume is that the decay rate, the speed at which the unstable radioactive element falls apart to become more stable and give off energy, that the speed at which that happens must have remained the same. Well, physical processes can speed up. Physical processes can slow down. And we're not real experienced and skilled at knowing everything that could speed up and slow down every process in the world. But this whole idea of uniformitarianism, that everything must have always happened exactly like it is now, it's absurd. If you look at curves of natural processes, plots on a graph, some of them are straight line, but many of them have a curve that really changes in steepness. And one of those little plots is time. So they can change over time how fast something happens or how strong something is. it's just not a valid assumption. Purdue University did some research that indicated that they're aware of times when the decay rates actually change. And I heard that there was a scientist in Germany. I haven't been able to get his information yet, but he indicates that some of his studies showed that the decay rates of radioactive substances can change. So it's just not good. They also assume that equilibrium's been reached. They assume that the atmosphere, because they already believed that the atmosphere was billions of years old, they knew, in quotes, they knew that carbon-14 is being created at the exact same rate that it's being destroyed. It had to be. It has to be equilibrium because, if you have a hot thing and a cold thing and put them next to each other, they're going to equal out to the same temperature eventually, right? Mm-hmm. And they say, well, as long as this system's been in existence, it must have reached equilibrium. But lo and behold, no. Carbon-14 is still building up in our environment, in our atmosphere. It has not reached equilibrium. So again, the calculations are going to come out with wrong answers. It's really, really kind of sad to be so certain of what you do not know. It's arrogance, and it's wrong.
Wow.
I mean, for example, they say, oh, it takes millions of years to make a diamond, right? Mm-hmm. And we know that in 100,000 years, all carbon-14 falls apart. You can't even detect it with our most sensitive instruments. But yet, what are we finding in diamonds? Carbon-14, which still exists. It's been in there for millions of years. It should have fallen apart by now. Well, maybe it's been less than 50,000 years old. That diamond that you said was millions of years old. How would you know it's millions of years old anyway? Does it have a little sign on it that says, I was made 100 million years ago? No, they don't. These are imaginations of men. Men are frequently wrong.
Wow.
Also, coal. They say coal is, 50 million years old. Well, then why does it have active carbon-14 still in it from the living things that it was made of? It shouldn't have any. It should have zero. But they can't find any coal that doesn't have carbon-14 in it. But they put that in the textbook and say, hey, we were wrong, guys. Sorry about misleading you about the age of everything. No. They don't want you to lose confidence in them. They don't want you to lose confidence in their belief that this is an ancient world and that the only things that are real are physical and that there's no God necessary. Don't worry. We've got it under control. We figured it all out. No, they haven't.
I'm amazed. I told my wife here a couple of weeks ago, I was reading about some things about outer space, and the scientists have said blah, 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 blah. And then I was reading about some things that took place here on Earth where something was discovered, and the scientists were saying blah, 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 blah. And then I sit there and I was thinking, no, wait a minute. Wasn't it years ago that they said about this same type of thing, another blah, 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 blah. Now it's another, and I told her, I said, they get so confused. They don't know what happened, where it happened. They forgot what happened. They forgot where it happened. Much less know what's going to happen next. Because about the time you hear them all getting their trumpets out and ready to stand on the sidewalk and give this huge triumphant trumpet blow, something comes down the pike, and it's like their trumpets just wilt in the sun. Like woo, woo, well, there'll be no trumpet blown today. We have to go back and figure out what to say about that thing that we thought was so certain.
And I say in all sincerity that anyone listening who's of a different opinion, be careful what you do with the information that you receive, and check out for truth, because God has even said in the scriptures that those who are unwilling to submit to the truth, that he will send them a strong delusion.
Yeah.
You want to be without me? Fine. I'll give you all the rationale and justification that you need to be without me. But the cost is going to be eternity. And it's just not worth it. Be humble, be willing to learn, check things out. Don't take my word for anything. Look it up, verify. I feel sorry for many scientists because they may be in a different field of science, but they trust the process of science. So they figure, well, the biologists must be right. They must know what they're doing. The astronomers must be right. They must know what they're doing. But you know what? I just took time off and checked it out and researched it. And it's a heavy lift, but I'm glad I did, because guess what? They, a lot of times, do not know what they're saying, yet they're saying it so confidently and so loudly, and to the exclusion of alternate evidence, which is the part that really bothers me. How in the world you can make a textbook, put in conclusions that are heavily biased, not put in the evidence by which they arrived at that conclusion, and not put in evidence contrary to it. That's just wrong. But that's standard in biology and in astronomy.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next time we have Randy on, we will have him on screen with all the bells and the whistles and doodads and whatnots and thingamajigs. That means pictures and all them good things. Randy, we made it. We made it. We took a different route, but we made it nonetheless.
Okay, sir.
And we'll get this thing all planned out of what we're going to do each time, so on and so forth. But it's been a delightful time. I had a thing, but I'm going to save that until I get you on screen.
Okay.
It's something, and I won't forget it because it's something that's burned into my brain housing group, and I'm constantly thinking about it. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I thank you for taking the time to be with us this afternoon. Start those watch parties, get them out there, and spread the word that we are going to be talking about science. It's fun, and all the interesting things with pictures and all them good things. So get those watch parties out there for us. Get them into your news stream, because that's someplace you can go and we can't go, and you can reach people. We can't reach everybody. So help us out with that. And I thank you, Randy. If you'd be so kind, if you got a couple minutes after we go off the air, I'd like to talk to you. If not, I'll talk to you later.
Let's do it.
Okay. But in the meantime, do this, ladies and gentlemen. Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 o'clock Pacific Time. Discover the true story of pilot Howard Schneider and the crew of the B-17 Susan Ruth. This man right here, Steve Schneider, is the son of the man who was the pilot of the B-17. They were shot down over the French-Belgian border in February of 1944. 10-man crew. Some of them died. Some were captured and became POWs. Others escaped and evaded and eventually made it back to England. Some fought with the resistance that helped them out. He wrote this book, Shot Down. More than 20 book awards. He's the winner of more than 20 book awards. There are over 200 pictures, time period photographs, the people that were involved in the places where their stories took place. He interviewed the remaining crew of this B-17, the Susan Ruth. He interviewed the German pilot that shot his father's plane down. There are videos and all kind of good things on the website. So please, I don't know if I had it up there or not. Let me stick it up there real quick. Sometimes you amaze yourself, Espenlaub. I mean, you are really something. Uh, there you go. There it is. Uh, there it is. All those things, letters, documents, directories, the whole 9 yards. And there's the man that wrote the book about his father and the crew of that B 17, Susan Roots. And that was named after his little baby that was born either right before or right after he left for England uh, to take command of his B 17. Uh, Tremendous story, incredible story. History in the truest sense of the word. And everybody needs to hear this story, and everybody needs to be a history buff. I'm a firm believer in this. Uh, there is so much history of our country. Uh, Removing statues and removing this out of textbooks and taking this out and not talking about this and blah, 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 blah doesn't do anyone any good. Listen, with our country, we have the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's history, ladies and gentlemen. It's history. All history wasn't good. All history wasn't pretty. Uh, has there been some serious injustices that took place? Yes. Are there some? Yes. And it goes on and on. But the fact remains, it's history. We need to know American history. The people behind the scenes, the people that got us to where we are today, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So tune in with me on Wednesday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, uh, right here, and it's 12 o'clock Pacific Time, where Steve will be coming to us from. So thank you for your time. Get them watch parties out there. And until Wednesday, I will be up on the radio. I don't know why I say up on the radio. I don't know if the radio's up or it's just an old habit I've been saying for years. We'll be up on the radio tonight, so join us at Spreaker.com, the George Espenlaub Show. And I'll see you back here on Wednesday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. Pacific Time. Until then, I trust that God will keep you right in the center of his hand. Goodbye, everybody.